Okay, so as always, how is everybody? How are you? So welcome everyone. So I want to welcome poet Binah Bodkin, and it always fascinates me how there are so many different types of women and how they express themselves, and how they bring forth their talents out into the Jewish world is just astounding. It's so humbling to me and so amazing to me that I can't get enough of it. So I want to talk a little bit and introduce Bina. Bina is a poet, a facilitator, and performer. She gives writing classes, and through them, she helps students connect to the energy of Geula through personalized writing prompts in a setting that is a group of practice, of healing, and we're interwoven with live original poetry performance. Isn't this unbelievably fascinating? She brings what she has coined rhyming tikkunim, or word energy medicine, to spur self-discovery. It's like amazing, and creativity. Past students have praised the class's transformative effects, one student noting that the course resolved haunting trauma that had not budged through traditional therapy. Bina holds a BA in English Lit from Wesleyan University and received holistic healing training in Hawaii for 3 years. She has led workshops since 2019 and supported individual healing since 2016. Audiences from Hawaii to Jerusalem have experienced her freestyle performances, and I will share all her information. As, by the way, I apologize, I also have to share Kathy's information. So with that, I feel so honored and humbled as always. And I can't wait to see how she's going to present and how she takes the poetry and this gift that she was given and how she shares it with all of us women. So Bina, are you there? I'm going to turn off my video. Hi, Bina.
Hi. Thank you so much, Naomi, for creating this container. I was just on YouTube last night watching some of the old episodes, and I was like, wow, there's some incredibly inspiring talks on this show. Yeah. And I don't know if my friend Razel is here, but I want to give a shout out to her because she gave me the idea to come and she made the connection between us. So shout out to Razel. Okay. So I am just going to take a moment to turn this whole share over to Hashem because he really knows what I should be sharing today. So just one sec. Okay. So there are so many different things I could share about. I could show you the freestyle poetry. I could tell you a bit about my story. I could talk about how words can be just such a deep key to our healing. But the title that I chose for this talk, when Naomi was reaching out to me to make the flyer, she was like, hey, I need you to give me a title for this talk.
Bina, can you give us just a little bit of an introduction of your background so we can shep naches and we can like.
Okay, sure. I'm getting a request for my background, so I will share. Okay. So I was raised in a very scientifically, academically oriented household. And like the idea of Hashem existing was just never part of the conversation, except to note that like people believed in Hashem because they didn't have other solutions in their life. So I always knew that I was Jewish. There was always a lot of pride about that. But being Jewish really meant like, Albert Einstein and Jerry Seinfeld and how my grandmother had survived leaving Austria in World War II. And so there were things that being Jewish meant, and it meant a lot of pride, but it had nothing whatsoever to do with Hashem at all. The word Hashem, I didn't even hear that word until I was in my late teens, early 20s, probably. I'd heard the word God, but so when I was in my late teens, I started to get really curious about healing and spirituality. I started having, I guess you could say, started having experiences that couldn't just be explained through regular means. And when I was in my late teens, I backpacked through South America before I went to college and ended up going on a whole bunch of adventures and journeys. And the point of that experience was it showed me life is so much bigger than just like academia and science. Like life is really expansive. People get to be happy. People get to have joyful, meaningful lives. And it can look so many different ways. It doesn't just have to look a very specific way. So that was a big revelation. I had the experience of like sitting with a shaman in Colombia, which I don't know if I would do that now. I would have to talk to my Rav. But back then I certainly didn't have a Rav and I wouldn't have asked. So those were some really key opening spiritual experiences. But even then, I was like, I still don't know if God is real. I think that might just have been like the effect of chemicals in the brain. Like, I'm not sure how to really explain that. So I was still like integrating and digesting. And then I went to college, and towards the end of college, I got very inspired actually by someone on YouTube who is not Jewish, but she just shared something about healing that really opened something for me. And then I ended up finding this Korean Zen center where I did some Buddhist training for like a chunk of time. And again, you know, I wouldn't go into that Buddhist center now, but at the time, that's really what I needed. And that's really where I was being led. So because of that practice, I became super present and super aware of energy. I became very close to a monk in training there who was teaching me about energy and how to feel it. And that was a really healing experience. And then I graduated college and I moved to Hawaii. Why? Because I just felt called. I started getting really clear gut feelings about my next right step. So I felt very called to go to Hawaii. And I had a friend who said, oh, I have an aunt who's a Jewish healer out there, and you're sort of getting into healing. So I think you guys would like to connect with each other. And I went, and me and the aunt met each other, but I was at that point in Hawaii and had to just figure out life. So right away, I just looked up like, where are the Jews in Hawaii? Because even though I had no concept that like there was spirituality inside of Judaism, I knew that I was a Jew. I was part of a tribe. That was home. And Hawaii definitely felt like a completely different universe. And I knew that I needed tribe with me. It was not like the East Coast at all. So right away, I encountered what's called the Maui Kosher Farm. And it's this like place that feels like it's straight out of the Tanakh. You see like sheep and goats and chickens. And there's like, you know, the rabbits in there. And it's just, anyway, so I went there and it was just the most geschmack experience. So for years I would go there, and she taught me about lighting candles. And at that point I was very sensitive to spirituality because I'd done so much meditating through the other spiritual practices that I could tell as soon as I lit the candles, I was like, whoa, there's something different about this candle lighting thing. I want to do it. So then I started lighting candles. When I found out that Shabbat is like a time of rest, I started napping on Saturdays. That was a big thing. I noticed that a nap on Saturday felt different than naps any other day of the week. I was like, I think there's something actually really special about Saturday. So then she told me about the different holidays, and I was like, oh, wow, I need that. A time to forgive and a time to say sorry. I need that in my life. A time to celebrate the trees. I need that in my life. So everything that I learned just practically had a place in my life. Okay. Is this more background than you wanted, Naomi?
No. It's so fascinating how you came to it. Like it just fascinates me. It's unbelievable. And then how you expressed the talents, and you probably wouldn't have even expressed your talents this way had you not come from the family that you came from. Like it would have never, all this poetry and who you became from your family probably would have never materialized had you been in a different type of environment.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have to say, like, the education I got, even though it was secular and devoid of Hashem, you know, in the school setting, I really learned grammar and sentence structure. I learned how to write a really good essay. I learned how to like analyze a document and find the there was like a certain skill set that I got from my educational background that is really valuable. And I'm very grateful for it. And also just I came to understand the value of like to be able to express yourself well in writing and verbally is like one of the best defenses in life. Like to be able to articulate your position, to be able to defend your situation, to be able to respond when something is just words are what keep us protected in society if we know how to use them well. Anyway, and also words connect us to Hashem, and also words connect us to each other. So, but I'm very grateful that I had that deep structure around language and how to best use the English language. That was very helpful. Okay, so, and then, yeah, so I started lighting candles and I started keeping the different holidays, and then bit by bit I was keeping Shabbos almost. I started separating milk and meat, not knowing that there was really such a thing as kosher meat, but I knew that like I shouldn't have a cheeseburger, so I would have the cheese and the burger separately, but I didn't know that there was like whole of Israel, and I didn't know that there was kosher meat, but I did have them separately, and I stopped having bacon. So I was just DIYing it and enjoying that, and then the pandemic came, and I realized I really couldn't trust the pillars of society. They just didn't feel like society was so solid, but I felt at that point very deeply that Torah was completely solid. So I was like, I really need to start learning Torah on an intellectual level, and on a more spiritual level, I was starting to feel very called to Torah. I tried to move to Israel at that time. I packed up my life in Hawaii and I stopped over in Brooklyn to say bye to some people, but then all the flights shut down because of COVID. So then I was like stranded in Brooklyn thinking, wow, I had this dream to learn Torah, and now I'm not going to be able to. I'm stranded in Brooklyn. What am I going to do in Brooklyn? I have nothing to do in Brooklyn. I was just saying bye to people here. I'm literally stuck in Brooklyn. So I got a job, was living day to day, feeling very much like I wasn't on my path because I was in Brooklyn. And then it turns out that actually Brooklyn is like another center of Torah in the world. You don't know that unless someone tells you that. So then I ended up meeting this wellness coach, Ora Chaya, shout out for being a shliach in my life. I met this wellness coach, and she was like, hey, I can tell that you have a really like a strong passion for Judaism. Have you heard of this place called Crown Heights? And I was like, well, I mean, actually, my brother used to live in like the black part of Crown Heights like years ago when I was in college. And so, I mean, yeah, I've been to Crown Heights, but why? And she's like, oh no, like there's this like Jewish part of Crown Heights. And I'm like, oh, and she's like, yeah, there's a shul there, and there's a hog coming up, Lag BaOmer. Do you want to come with me? And I was like, okay, sure. So then from then on, I was dropped in Crown Heights, and then that became, that was my arrival. Then I joined a seminary there, learned a ton, went to Israel the next year, then worked in Philly at a cheder for a year, tried to move to Israel in June of last year, finally. And then when the war started, I returned to Boston, which is where a lot of family lives. And so now for the first time, I'm like rejoined with my family tree, but now with my frumkeit. And so my parents have just seen so much about like kashrus and Shabbos, and there's this like reweaving that's happening now in my family, which is just very, very beautiful. And if I'd stayed in Israel, that wouldn't have happened. So anyway, I'm always telling Hashem where I want to go. And then Hashem is like, actually, you're going to go here. I'm like, wait, but I, and then I realize why his plan for me is much better than my plan for myself. But all this to say, so what is the topic of the talk today? So the topic is Ayin Tova, how our words, how to counter baseless hatred with baseless love. And this is for the month of Tammuz, which, did Tammuz officially start yet, Naomi?
No, Tammuz, Rosh Chodesh is Shabbos and Sunday this year.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so it's for Tammuz, and okay, you know what? I'm sorry, I'm just gonna pause for a sec because I just gave you guys my whole story, and that was quite a download before we even get into the topic. So I'm just gonna take a breath with that. Hang on. Okay. So regarding the freestyle poetry, where does that enter the story? I was writing poetry since I was a kid, but a few years before the pandemic, I developed the capacity to freestyle without writing it down ahead of time, partly because it was a healing experience for me, and partly because I was performing in a community of kind of hippies on Maui who were just very supportive and had a lot of love and care for each other, and their support helped me just have the confidence to start freestyling more and more. And then when I started learning Torah, the freestyle got a lot deeper, and I started discovering that the freestyle is really about Geula. The freestyle that comes through is really about the Mashiach reality that is accessible, but it's just a little bit of a different vibration to pull on. So I find that the freestyle brings myself and others into that energy of Geula. That's why it's very healing. And also that's why I think it's important to share with other people, because I do believe that we all have the capacity to use our words to tap into this higher space. And it's just, have you done it before? Have you ever seen someone do it? Do you know what it looks like for you to do it? So I have discovered that this capacity is contagious, and people I've worked with have over time developed the ability themselves. It looks a little different for each person, but there is like a flow of words, a flow of healing rhymes in the universe. And if we become available to them, they are spoken through us, and they bring us in connection with Geula. That's my experience of it anyway. I call it word medicine, word energy medicine, rhyming Tikkunim. These are just terms I'm using to kind of capture what that looks and feels like, but you know, you'll see and discover for yourself. Okay, so yes, so something I love to do is each month I like to take the theme and the energy of the month and use that as a basis for deepening the writing, the healing, and the poetry practice. So for instance, there was like, I did a class called Sinai writing for, walking our way up Sinai. That was for Pesach. And then there was Nisan writing our liberation. And there was Adar writing for joy. So there's always this like energy to the month. And it's like, how do we use our words to bring in and bring down that energy? So that's very exciting to me because I love the Jewish calendar and I love living in the Jewish calendar and I love the healing invitation of every single month. And that is not something I enjoyed from the secular calendar. It was like January, February, March. Like, what are these months? Okay. They're very useful. Okay. I'm not upset about it. It's just, they don't give me the same invitation that the beautiful Jewish calendar gives me. So, okay. So I'm going to actually start with a poem and then I'll go into the topic of today. And the topic of today is Ayin Tova, Tammuz, cultivating baseless love. Why is that the topic of this month? It's the topic of this month because we know that Av and the destruction in Av, we know that we lost the Beis HaMikdash because of baseless hatred, right? And we know we lost the Beis HaMikdash because of our Ayin Hara on each other and our negative thought, speech, and action towards other Jews or baseless hatred. That's why we lost the Beis HaMikdash. We lost it for that reason. We all know that, okay? So what is the tikkun potential in Tammuz? The potential is to develop that Ayin Tov, the Ayin Tova, so that we aren't, so that we're making a tikkun for mistakes of the past and we're understanding how to see each other in the best way and how to use our words to build up Ahavas Israel and to bring forth the third Beis HaMikdash. So that is, yeah, that's why I'm excited about stepping into Tammuz and about this concept of writing the Ayin Tova, using our words to create that. So I'll get into that in a sec. I'm going to start with the poem. Okay. So what I'm getting is, hang on. If you would like, you could drop a word or two in the chat and I will use your word in the poem. So I can take maybe like 3 or 4 words and just let them help weave the poem. So if you're feeling inspired, feel free to write a word in the chat and that can also be the basis of the poem. And I'll give you guys like, I don't know. I'll give it 10 seconds and see if any words pop up. Forgiveness, awesome. Gift, love, Amuna. Perfect. That's 4 words and we're going to just stop there. Okay, unity, if I can work it in, I will. Acceptance, okay. I try not to make the list too long because I've tried to include like 14 words before and it just ends up a little messy. Okay, you know what? I'm seeing like the overall energy of these words and I'll certainly take those in even if not every word lands in. Forgiveness, gift, love, Amuna. Generosity, gratitude, acceptance, unity, trust, help. Okay. Okay. Okay, here's what's coming. Okay. Help, redemption, acceptance, love. These actions are with Hashem hand in glove. As we learn that what comes from above and inspires below is this continuous curiosity and generous flow. There's something that occurs between hearts and minds when we just realize how we are so divinely intertwined, that everything has a mind like its own unique ship, but inside there's always this clip, this possibility for connection and for sight, and to realize that there isn't any wrong. It's all just kind of right. It's all kind of the right side, the right eye. Are we seeing things in a way that helps the time go by with peace and healing and goodness and flow? Can we understand that everything that happens, it's sheet notes from Hashem's throat, from Hashem's mouth. It's something that's happening, and it's just us who has to learn about and see it the right way and understand that nothing that happens is a mistake. It's all about, can we pick it up and see that we won't break? What breaks away is what has to be cleared, because something has to come through, a unity that's so dear and so good and so delicious and so real. And that is that deeper truth that each of us has to feel. Okay, so I hope that I got at least some of your words in there.
Wow, that was
Incredible.
amazing. Whoa,
Thank you,
that
Naomi.
is so amazing. Wow, I had to say that.
Thank you so much. I have to say, it's the energy of this container. The energy of the container inspires the poem. If you ladies weren't here with me, that poem wouldn't have come. So we pulled that down. We pulled that down together. Okay. All right. So, okay. Thank you for these really sweet messages. Okay. So Ayin Tova. So I was just thinking about this last night, and I was like, okay, so what is this concept about the Ayin Tova and baseless love? How easy or hard is baseless love? If I'm really honest with myself, how often am I really in a space of non-judgment with other people? If I'm really honest with myself, how often do I really have an Ayin Tov on others when they do something that bothers me, when they do something that I deem as wrong or incorrect? How often am I really living in that space of baseless love? And if I understand that baseless hatred is what lost us the Beis Hamikdash, but I also understand that, like, a Jew has not really changed in 2,000 plus years. Like, things that bothered people in the market 2,000 years ago and, like, you know, caused someone to have an Ayin Hara on her neighbor, that's still happening. Someone still could be cutting me off in line at Marketplace Kosher in Crown Heights. That can still happen. Or, you know, someone, like, the things that bothered us at that time and caused us to have negative judgments on each other, those things haven't changed. We're still doing those things. We're still being bothered by each other, probably in similar ways that we were being bothered by each other at that time. We haven't changed so much in these thousands of years. We've learned a lot. But, like, our that struggle of the Yetzer Hara, Yetzer Tov, that struggle is still there. So for us to expect, like, oh, you know, like, we're in the early times of Geula, and, like, you know, Mashiach is coming any day now. Like, shouldn't we all just have baseless love at this point? And it's like, you know, that struggle is still going to be there. So what is the conscious choice that we have to make for that struggle to get resolved, for us to actually live the baseless love and actually live the Ayin Tova? Like, what could that possibly look like? So I'm just going to sit with that question for a sec. And what do words have to do with this? What does writing and words and freestyle have to do with any of this? Okay. So I think the thing to realize, the word that's coming to me is splendor. And the word that was coming to me yesterday is mercy. And if I can start to understand that when someone does something that I perceive as negative, someone does something I perceive as annoying or incorrect or wrong, that person is actually giving me as much, if not more, an opportunity to connect to Hashem and tap into Hashem's deeper truths and reality than if she was doing something that I considered right and easy and the correct thing to do. So, meaning I think we can all understand and relate to this. I've learned more from my struggles in life than from the easy things. The easy things have been awesome and nice and freebies, but it's the struggles, it's those friendships that didn't work out. It's the times I did feel abandoned. It's the situations where there was the teacher who said something that actually made me feel less about myself, so that I had to dig deep and then feel more. You know, like, if I can actually understand that, like, people who are doing things that bother me are as much shluchim as people who are doing things that are helping me, then I can start to have an Ayin Tova. Then I can start to go, oh, this is all Hashem's mercy. This is all Hashem's mercy. Oh, okay. If this is all Hashem's mercy, then I can actually have gratitude for the moments when people do things that bother me, trigger me, annoy me, offend me, disturb me, disrupt me, Haz v'shalom, traumatize me, whatever it is. Like, all of these things, if we truly like integrate this truth that we know to be true, which is that Gams Latova, everything is for the good, then it becomes easy to have an Ayin Tova. Thank God she did that thing that bothered me, because otherwise I wouldn't have known to talk to Hashem in that moment. Or thank God I didn't get invited to that party and I felt abandoned, because then I ended up finding out about the party I really needed to go to. It's this like balance of chesed and gevura. People have to say no to me so that other people can say yes to me. If everyone's a yes, I won't know where to go. It's just everything's going to be like a pancake, like no hills, no valleys, just flat. And that's not. So anyway, so I think what's really important to actually take the responsibility to create the Ayin Tova is to get very clear on what are the resentments I'm carrying towards people from the past or in the present, and what are the fears that I'm carrying from the past and from the present. And what's the other way to see them? What is the turnaround? What is the Geuladic way of seeing this? How can I actually live and understand that too was Hashem's mercy? Instead of seeing this as like some, creature who's bothering me, seeing this person as an agent of Hashem's mercy. And not in some like, spiritual bypassing way. I'm not going to feel my feelings. I'm going to pretend that everything is just honky-dory, because that's not real either. Actually sitting with it and being like, okay, there is resentment here. There is fear here. How do I like work with that? For me, how do I write with that? How does that become the building blocks for my deeper liberation? How is she liberating me by being terrible to me? How? So that I think is the invitation of Tammuz, is how are we making the efforts to construct our Ayin Tova? How are we taking those steps and making those actions part of our real lived experience? And then when, when we get to that, space and awe where we're doing that grieving and we're understanding what happened in the past, then at least we can take responsibility for the future and be like, oh, okay, we worked with that, we learned with that, and now we're actually using our perspective and our capacity to see that everything is part of Hashem's plan to create the Ayin Tova. The Ayin Tova is something we have to build together. We have to practice together, and like thank each other for the opportunity to practice. So I'm just going to pause right there, because that was kind of the bit I wanted to give over about Tammuz and writing the Ayin Tova. And this, I haven't started yet, but that is going to be the entire topic of my next month's writing class. But I'm really glad I got to start to explore it here. So I just want to open the floor a little bit. If any questions are coming up, or if anyone has something to share. And sometimes what happens when people share things is that I'll get a poem on someone's behalf to give over. And so if that happens, that's great. Or sometimes it'll inspire a writing prompt, and maybe if we want to work with that as a group, we could. But also I want to be sensitive to the time, Naomi. So
Okay. So we'll open it up just to a few questions, if that's okay.
Okay.
I got to tell you, this is beyond fascinating. It's also like your poetry is like a form of hipodadut, right? Which is a form of hipodadut. It's like a very interesting way of going at it, and it's so fascinating to me to see the different ways of how people express themselves, and this is just unbelievable. And I have to say something else. You talked about how you said how the Ayin Tova is when we get this opportunity that comes our way, and we've all experienced this. I always say, when people put up memes, when they put up memes, I'm going to let Bracha get on in a second. When people put up memes and they always go, I always see these things like, those people in your lives that do such and such to you, like, don't pay, like, let them go. And I always think to myself, we're all those people. Because everybody says that about everybody else, right? So we're all those people. So I always say, why don't you become the person, right? Why don't you become the person that you think that you're like, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, become that person that you think everybody else should be. And when you become that person that you think everybody else should be, then everybody will become that person. right? We'll all
I am.
be in this place of not doing these things to each other. And then another thing you said, and I'm going to open it up in a second, but another thing you said, which is so interesting, because you said like the Ayin Tova, how this gives us an opportunity. And my thing is that it gives us an opportunity to heal. That Hashem gives us these awful experiences, which nobody should have them with people. We should all be so kind and loving to each other and great. But it's our own work that we need to do in order to come to those places. But it's really an opportunity to see that's not who we are. I always say that. We're not the person who got rejected at the party or didn't get invited. We're not that person. We're none of those people. We're not those people. Where we think we are, that's why they affect us so badly. But when we realize that we're not those people, then it doesn't affect us because we don't believe, we're not buying into it, right? So it's almost this opportunity of Hashem showing us our greatness and how much he loves us and all these different things. So, okay, so I'm going to open it up. I saw somebody else. Did somebody want to ask Bina a question? Bina, how does your family feel about this whole change?
My family is becoming observant has brought me a lot closer to my family because that mitzvah of honoring my parents, like I take that mitzvah seriously. So it's caused me to become a lot closer to my family. So they're really happy about it. They're like, wow, we like your values. This thing is cool that you're doing. Keep doing it. I'm like, okay, do you guys want, and I'll make them meal sometimes for Shabbos and they really like that. They don't love all the rituals. They're like, do we really have to like wash the hands and like say the things and like what can we just eat? And I'm like, well, no, but like I try to keep it as whatever. Anyway. Yes, they appreciate it. They're happy about it. Yeah, it's not a fight. They see how much closer it brought me to them. It brought me back from Hawaii. When I was in Hawaii, I was very far away. There wasn't the expectation that I would necessarily ever come back. And now here I am. I'm in Boston. I'm in the city where my family lives.
My father's from Boston.
No way. Amazing.
Yeah. My dad's from Boston. Yeah.
Oh,
okay. Now,
I'm seeing Chaya. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sure.
No, Naomi wants to ask you a question. Go ahead, Naomi.
Thank you, Naomi. So obviously you are very, very talented and
right.
And this comes naturally to you. What would you say, well, for someone who's not so talented with their words, how does one go about developing this? I mean, you obviously get workshops, so.
Great question. It is totally developable. And people often separate themselves from me. They're like, oh, you seem to have this special thing with words. I don't have that. So we're not even going to be like in the same, and that's not true. I think I'm just like patient zero. Like, I think I'm just an early adapter of this new program. And I'm just like here to share it and let other people know that this is there is an access point for the words for most of us. I think most of us actually do have this access. What is it? So it's a few things. One, clearing out a lot of garbage. If you want to turn on the faucet so that if you want the spigot to flow, you have to clear out the gunk from the drain. So a lot of the early stuff that I help people through is just literally just word purges. All like the stuck words, the words that are sullied in our mind, the words that are in the way, just kind of purging, which just means like taking your pen and just writing out all the junk, like without filtering it. So that's kind of like a cleanse, like a detox. And then after you're kind of past the detox phase, then it's like, if I tune into you a bit, I can kind of get an intuition on what is that next thing for you to write about, what's going to open up to you. And then, so I share that prompt with you and then you write about that prompt and you discover for yourself, oh, there is something alive here. And then you just kind of start waking up with it. Like I give you little boosts and helps like stand on my shoulder and look over the wall and you'll see things. And does that help explain?
Yes. Thank you.
Sure.
You know what also, Naomi, what is so beautiful about what she said? And when you think about it, it's also about letting go. You know how you said, like, you're talented at it, but how do you go about it? But it's the same thing, like, if you stand in a room and you dance, right? And nobody else watches you, right? You just let go. And it's the same thing. It's so beautiful what she says, how she prompts and how she creates. She takes out all those yucky words and she brings you to this different state. And I guess it's all part of the same thing. It's like, who cares? Like, I can do this and I can say all these things. And who cares if it rhymes perfectly? Like, let's just express.
The crazy thing, Naomi, is when you start trusting, the words will tell the story through you. and you don't have to do a thing. Like when you start to know that there really is this like beautiful rhyme and rhythm that wants to move through you, you don't have to do a thing. You just have to trust the words. I don't know what's going to be said before I open my mouth. I just know the next word. And it's like they're like being like one step at a time. And if I can trust the words, then I don't really have to do anything. Just like if
But
I
were you
life.
always like this? Were you like this from like a child?
No, the capacity to freestyle only arose for me like 2 years before the pandemic. That's why I know that this is a learnable skill. I did not always have this skill. This is not something I could just do. I always loved writing. I always loved
I was going to say, you were probably a great writer.
I always loved to write. But this is not the same as loving to write. This is something else. I always had an affinity for words. That's true. But like, you know, that's why I say I think maybe I was like a good patient zero, you know, whatever, like, but I've always had that affinity. But to be able to freestyle, that genuinely is like a very recent thing in my life, just the last couple of years. And it gets deeper all the time. And sometimes I'm like sitting on the bus and I'm like, I'm getting a poem for the person next to me. Should I tell them? Maybe I'll keep it for myself. I got this message here from Chaya at 9:08. So hopefully she's still here, Chaya. How to turn feelings of inferiority or feelings of jealousy with that quality of Ayin Tova. Yeah, totally. Yeah, when our self-esteem issues get kicked up and it's like, oh, I see that, you know, she just bought that house and like, am I ever going to get to buy a house? Or like, you know, whatever it is. Okay, so the feelings of jealousy and inferiority. Okay, so I'm getting a poem for you, Chaya, and here's what I'm getting. Inferiority, superiority, perceived images of glory, all of that is a story. It's just frills. It's not the truth. And it's these lies that kill our joy and our self-esteem. And we have to understand our inner Malchus, our inner queen, and let that knowing us redeem so that we can glow and understand that we're all on the same river. We're just in different boats. And each boat is not made the same way because that would be such a boring story for Hashem to say. So let yourself discover with more juiciness and rhyme the beautifulness that Hashem planted in you in this moment in time. And just trust him that he did just fine. He's a great craftsman and his work is not flawed. And whatever he brought through in each of us is what we need. And sometimes we're like a construction that's getting sawed and getting built and remade like clay. And just to trust that the story Hashem tells about us today is so much more beautiful than the one that we know about us. And just over time to turn more deeply into that trust. So that's just like the short.
That is so.
But I relate to that. So sometimes what I'll do, like I was at this an interesting like Jewish music festival last weekend, and you know, seeing all different kinds of people with different skills and different things. Like sometimes that brought up stuff for me. Sometimes I was like, oh, I wish I could, or like, why can't I, or you know, like. And I just had to like take some space, say some poems to myself, remind myself of my inner Malchus, and that was it. And then go back and flow with the crowd, you know? I found a hammock and I just like swung like a baby on this hammock. And when people would pass by in the music festival, I'm like, hey, can you swing me? And they'd like swing me. And I was just looking up at the trees and like tuning in and letting Hashem remind me that everything is coming from his mercy. And even if I'm comparing myself, it's okay. He's not comparing me. And
I hope you record all these.
Yeah, and not just that, I think it's a story, I think everybody's story that we have to get out of, you know, like that story. And it's beautiful the way that you take yourself out of the stories of, you know, the scarcity and limited beliefs about ourselves.
Yeah.
Really amazing. Amazing. I tell you, you are amazing. Come on, everyone is going to say it together. You are amazing.
Oh my gosh.
You are amazing.
You're really
amazing.
May I ask a question?
You're amazing.
Last question, and we're going to see. I
have a
13.
question.
Charlene, go ahead. We're going to say the last question. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I was taking deep breath because your flow of words, everything was so huge and big. My question is going to shock you. Sorry, but I felt like I needed, where is the silence in all those words? Make me a poem.
Yeah. Where's the silence? One sec, let's just take a breath with that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Mm.
There it is.
Yeah. Silence is really important. Taking a breath with things. Pausing before I talk. Bringing in Hashem before I speak. I probably did that this morning. I usually remember to do that before I share. I just pause and ask Hashem to come in and work through me. Yeah, totally. For the words to come through that are really good and aligned, we have to get quiet first. I completely.
But you did it a lot. You did that
Yeah.
a lot, Bina.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You took
did.
pauses before. Right.
Exactly.
You actually did it.
And
You
it was
actually did that
and-
silence.
Yeah, and what it showed me for sure is you did it with such naturalness.
Yes.
It didn't look
gonna
embarrassed.
say
Like
that
I
also.
said, I must learn.
Yeah.
This is very important. Look how natural and normal it looks. Like sometimes I feel pressured, like the person just needs me to finish, or the person I have to get my point, and it doesn't work. It doesn't feel good, not to me and not to the other person. And it was almost respectful to everyone. Let me let me sit with this.
Right.
And it felt right. It felt so.
Yes.
Right.
I
Right.
was that
100%.
was like a powerful thing that I saw. So that's you are like that, Bina. It's quite incredible. Wow.
Yeah. I tell you, it's been a really such an interesting week, but the ability to experience so many types of different women, really it enriches our life. You enriched our life today.
Aw,
You
likewise.
did. You enriched our life today. You enriched our understanding. Like you broadened us.
In so many ways. Yes.
Yeah, it was amazing.
And just
Amazing.
by watching you, it's not just your words. It's really,
Right.
Mama's, your whole presence, where you
Aw.
presented. Like,
Amazing.
It's pure joy. It's pure joy.
Bina, you taught
Amazing.
Really pure joy. It's a
Bina,
pleasure. You made me
I
happy.
wasn't expecting to get so many compliments. I'm gonna have to
I wanna
praise you
tell you-
later.
No, it's
you taught me how to be myself, because
Aw.
we forget what we have, and you just
Right.
showed myself.
Mm. Mm.
yeah.
But I have to tell you something also about Chef Esther. I got to
Yeah.
tell you that when I hear all the different ways that people say Nishmas, it's also exhilarating
Mm.
because it shows you how we're all connected. We all come a little bit from different places. We all have like different customs and different ways and different connections. And it's also such a lesson in acceptance and expansion. So I just want to tell you that I love the way you say Nishmas.
Thank you.
yes, it's
I
true.
agree.
I love it too. It's beautiful.
Yes, you could feel your
I love
daylight
your
all the way back to Queen Esther. It's like something you are a powerhouse. You hit
I'm
the
seeing-
Himland, let me tell you.
Oh,
It's a
thank
part
you
of
so much.
soul.
I'm seeing my dear friend and past student Malka Bracha is on the line. Malka Bracha, I just saw that you turned on your camera, so I gotta give you a shout out. Hi there. Hello.
Okay. Okay. So Malka Bracha can say hello, but we have to, we're going to have you back. We're going to have you
Okay.
back. I'm going to share your information. So people
Thank
who
you.
want to take a course with you or want to do a workshop, I'm going to share that. I
Oh,
can't
thank
thank
you
you
so much.
enough and for sharing your journey with us too. What a beautiful journey. And
I hope you're writing
Really-
a book.
yeah, amazing.
I am
right?
actually
amazing.
slowly but surely.
Okay, amazing. I'm going to go off. I'm going to take us off. I want to